So the new trailer for Dune Part 2's just dropped, and throughout this video we're going to be breaking it all down. The teaser comes with a lot of hints at what's going to be happening in the movie, and it also shows us elements where they might be setting up a sequel. Yep, Denis Villenuve has stated that he wants to do Dune Messiah at some point, and there's clearly some things here that are putting things in place. Now, I will be trying to avoid all major spoilers here, but with this being based on a book, there will be some things we can't avoid talking about. So if you don't want anything from the film potentially ruined, then I highly recommend you turn off now, but we will try and keep it light spoilers, which is now the new channel name. Now, without the way, a huge thank you for checking this out. Welcome to Light Spoilers. I'm your host, Paul. Now let's get into Dune.
This world is beyond cruelty. You've been fighting the Harkonnens for decades. My family's been fighting them for centuries. They were massacred alongside my father.
Your father didn't believe in revenge. We believe in Fremen.
Let me fight beside you.
Reload!
Now we begin with the sunset over Arrakis, and symbolically this shows what's going on in the film. We're about to come to the beginning of Paul's actual reign, and from here darkness will spread across the universe. This is all linked to the prophecy with the character, and in this trailer they talk a lot about its usage and how it can bring power. Now over the sun we can see 2 moons almost eclipsing it, and in total Arrakis has 3 moons. These are called Krellin, Arvon, and One, and from here we cut to Paul then touching the sand. Laden with spices builds off the back of the first movie when they rescued the miners from the giant worms. That was the first time Paul actually touched the surface with his hands, and the shot kind of has the shimmer over it where it looks like it's part of his dream. This is something that we saw in the first part when he imagined Chani, and my guess is that he's imagining this scene. Here though, we can also see Paul's eyes have started to turn blue, and this indicates that he spent a long time with the spice. We get a Harkonnen ship tearing up the landscape, and this is likely an attack on the rebelling Fremen. House Harkonnen of course rules over the planet, and from here we cut to Rabban and also Vladimir. Adorned in black, they've now taken over, and we see their vast armies numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Black banners fly, evoking Nazi imagery, and we can also catch Vladimir floating with metallic balls. The guy was so fat that he had to use this to get around, but it also carries this idea that he's above all. Now, though it seems like the Harkonnens truly rule everything, there's actually a lot going on politically at this moment. Vladimir's had Rabban running amok on the planet, and he's seen as a bloodthirsty tyrant that shows no mercy. Vlad is purposely allowing someone absolutely terrible to rule over things so that when he brings in Fade, things seem a lot better. Fade will be played by my man Austin Butler, who's just coming off the back of rocking it as Elvis. Throughout the trailer, you might notice
he's white.
He's white?
What do you think, Texarkana?
He's white.
And he's seen as the next in line to the Harkonnen household. Now we have made a full video breaking him down if you want to know all the ins and outs of this specific character, but I don't want to just repeat everything from that as we'll be here all day, and I know you've got stuff to do like hitting the thumbs up button. Simply put though, he and the Atreides child were supposed to get wed, and this would finally bring both of their houses together. Their child will then go on to become the Kwisatz Haderach, and they'd rule over the universe and bring everyone in line. Also, I double checked the pronunciation. I know I keep getting crap for mispronouncing that, but I double checked it this time.
Another to form the Kwisatz Haderach.
Lady Jessica was instructed that she had to have a girl, and Spice even allows one to choose her child's gender. However, Duke Leto wanted a son, and because she loved him, she gave him one, and thus this knocked up the entire plan that they'd had in place for millennia. The Bene Gesserit had carefully selected Bloodlines so that one day they could finally bring the chosen one in. For centuries, they've pushed the prophecy that this is a supreme being, and slowly people have started to believe, even though it's made up. What Dune's about is basically how faith can be used to manipulate and make people think someone's amazing, when really they're just terrible and also a puppet. This is something we get touched upon later on in the trailer, and Paul's going to have to weigh up whether he can use this. Now back to Fade, and he's basically Paul's opposite, as he's the son of a house who's supposed to inherit everything. Now the two houses not having children that would wed has thrown them back into an endless war, which we hear Paul talking about over the top of the teaser. He says how the Fremen have been fighting them for decades, whereas with his family he's been fighting them for centuries. Interspersed with this are shots of the Duke's ring, which we saw the character carrying in that first film. His bloody hand can be seen here along with all the corpses that the Harkonnens collected after the attack in the first film. Cremated, we then cut to a picture of the Duke riffing on one of their ancestors from Dune Part 1. We then see the war playing out with them summoning a Dune and also blowing up an ornithopter with a rocket launcher. The Fremen skills have been built up and improved, and this is because Jessica has shown them the weirding way.
He said
I got that. Thanks.
I won't be fighting for him. I'm fighting for my people.
You young pup.
Do you believe in Paul?
There are signs. The prophet. Why is that a bad thing? Use it.
Because all my visions lead to horror.
Because you lose control.
Because I gain it. Chani, do you believe in me?
Paul Atreides is still alive.
Now the next part of the trailer shows Paul being shunned by some of the Fremen, and I actually think this might be connected to Jamis. This is the character that Paul killed at the end of the first film, and though it was part of their ways, it hasn't gone down well. In the book, killing someone like this meant you had to also look after their family, but whether they bring this into the film, we'll have to wait and see. It means adding in even more characters, and I think it might be better if they just skip it and have Paul and Chani on their own. Things get complicated enough with the love triangle later on, but this could be used as a way that people hate Paul as he didn't do his duty. I actually think that this might be early on in the film, as we can see his eyes still look normal when we cut to the shot of him here. Paul's story in this film will basically be him convincing the Fremen he's the chosen one, and then they'll start to fall in line and become extremely loyal. So it makes sense that they would start off being like, sod the guy, don't like his video, don't subscribe, and then he's got to win them round with his charming wit and humour. Now, had he not weaponized the prophecy, then he wouldn't be able to get them round, and he becomes very manipulative in order to seize power. Now, Dune has lots of comments on religion like this and how it can be used as a way to help control the masses. The idea that you might go to hell if you're bad has kept people in line over the centuries, and religions of course have their figureheads that people get behind. Paul is this one, and if people believe they're following the Messiah, they're more likely to do horrendous things because it's quote-unquote God's way. We see Chani conflicted by this, and she says she's not fighting for him, but yeah, she too seems to get swept up in this false prophecy. Now the movie also asks the question if prophecies can be forced to come true if people believe in them hard enough and want them to be real. They start to see the signs popping up everywhere, and we can see as Stilgar gets swept up in believing Paul's the one. Riding on a worm, we watch his face in absolute awe and also hear Jessica asking if he believes in Paul. He says there are signs and starts to convince himself too, which makes him fall in line and then start to worship him. Now on the other side of this, we have my man Gurney, who survived the attack from the very first film. Coming face to face with Paul in the desert, the pair are reunited, and his forces alongside the Fremen help to make an army. Now you might notice that his hair's a lot longer than it was in that first movie, and this shows how long that they've been out in the desert. The latter part of the book spans several years, and this is how Paul gains the blue eyes that we see him rocking. Now it turns out that Gurney had ended up joining with some smugglers, and that over time he'd become the leader of them. Stilgar was attempting to take this unit out, but when Paul saw Gurney, both sides stepped down. United, they became a much larger force, and this gave Paul great numbers to go up against the Harkonnens. We even see Gurney suggesting Paul use the prophecy for power, and he'll of course need to get everyone to fall in line. Now his response is that all of his visions led to horror, and unfortunately that comes true when we get into the sequel. People start carrying out horrendous acts on those that don't obey, and he leads a holy war against the rest of the universe. His followers are extremely devout and will fight to the death, which the other armies and houses simply aren't a match for. According to the book, the jihad he carries out kills 60 billion in his name, and the visions he's having are coming as a warning. Again, he says that Paul might be worried that he loses control, but Paul says it's more because he gains it. This of course comes to be with him gaining power, and this causes a lot of destruction in the galaxy. Now alongside this, we see the Water of Life being touched as part of the ritual that will allow Lady Jessica to become a Reverend Mother. We also get the blade shown from the final fight with Fade, and this is between the two sons for who will take control of Arrakis. We see the blade stain, so I'm guessing Paul managed to get a hit, but there's a big curveball that then gets thrown in. We see Erlan and the Emperor learning Paul's alive, and my man Christopher Walkens now walking on thin ice.
Why?
In case you don't know, Erlan's his daughter, and she's possibly going to inherit a war caused by her father. The Emperor schemed with the Harkonnens to take out the Atreides because, as a house, they were just getting too popular. So hot right now, and this is why they gave them Arrakis in the first place, as it would be the planet that was going to bring them down. However, we see that this hasn't been the case, and now the Emperor's worried that he's going to lose it all. He ends up doing something with his daughter that I don't want to spoil here, but we will talk about it at the end of the video if you want to know that.
Deal with this prophet.
Show me who you are.
Your father. Was a weak man.
Look who's back from the dead.
I will do what must be done.
We gave them something to hope for.
That's not hope!
I will love you as long as I breathe.
This prophecy is how they enslave us!
It's not a prophecy. It's a story.
I don't care what you believe. I believe. I am Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, Duke of Arrakis, and the Messiah
He who can destroy a thing has the real control of it.
Now from here, Christopher Walken is Christopher talking, and he talks about how they have to deal with Paul. Over this we see a thumper calling in a worm, and the Fremen of course have found a way to weaponize these creatures. Now the way the Emperor wants to bring Paul down is through the use of Fade, who we see in the next shot in high contrast black and white. Talked about this in the other breakdowns, but I believe this is a flashback with the colour scheme being used to highlight it's in the past. That first movie didn't feature him at all, even though in the story he's a pretty big part. So I think they're kind of retroactively introducing him here to show what he was up to whilst the Atreides had just taken the planet. A skilled warrior this plays into the end in which both he and Paul have a knife fight to the death. Now this is something that's shown towards the end of the trailer, and I believe we see other elements for it when we catch the Emperor. He says that the Duke was a weak man, and we also see his ring along with the painting that burns amongst the fire. This was shown in the first teaser, and it does look more like the painting that I talked about before, and I'm guessing someone grabbed the ring off the finger that we saw and then passed it on to Paul. Come the end of the trailer, we see him putting this on and then announcing himself as the Duke of Arrakis. Now his dad was somewhat of a pacifist that didn't want a war, and this is why the Emperor is here calling him weak. He's taunting Paul to not follow in his footsteps, and from here we get shots of the battle playing out on the planet. We also see Raban going up against Gurney, and this is a vendetta the pair have carried since that first film. Paul questions whether Chani actually believes, and we do sort of get the idea that she kind of sees through all the BS. She's of course very close to the entire thing and knows Paul as a person, so I'm guessing that they might either use her to be like, look how it can corrupt people, or just showing the falsitude of it. Falsitude, is that word? Now, in the end, prophecies have of course been used to control the people, and had this not been put in place, then I doubt people would have got behind Paul. Starting to sound like a broken record going over this entire thing, but yeah, that's kind of the themes that I'm getting from this teaser. Now probably my favourite shot in the trailer comes when we get a bird's eye view of what we initially think are grains of sand. However, this is revealed to actually be the Fremen army, and we see Paul moving amongst the middle of them. Sand of course contains spice, and spice is what everyone's fighting for, and it also exemplifies how the planet and people have become his army. Jessica says Paul gave the people hope, but we know that what he really did was throw them into war. Now we see this playing out along with the cost of it, which has Chani now almost taking the place of what was shown in his vision. I don't think it's any coincidence that this looks similar to that scene from the first film where he imagined himself on the battlefield partaking in the war. However, he sees how it's become Chani, and it shows how his visions can be slightly off. Now the first film had him getting ones where he thought he would die fighting Jamis, however we know that that didn't come to be true. However, the character did die in many respects, and it shows the visions can be interpreted differently. Paul shouts out to her, but I'm guessing this is stitched together from another scene because I don't know if he'd just be standing off to the side during such a big battle. Now we actually see the setup to this coming later on when we watch the two sides charging at each other. Either way, he promises he'll love her as long as he breathes, but yeah, we'll get into that towards the end of the video. Now it's clear that Paul just doesn't believe the prophecy, but even still God's now so ingrained into it that he just won't see the truth. It shows how faith can often override it, and even when stuff's shown to be false, if you believe it, you won't falter. Paul's kind of being forced down this path, and we then see his army as well as the worms that he's now controlling. It leads to some gigantic set pieces and some incredible explosions, with Paul hoping that because he can destroy his fate, that he can control it. He will get forced into doing things and it will consume him though, and he'll create a monster that he simply can't control. Now as to how he settles things with the Emperor, I wanted to leave this until the end in case you're someone who just doesn't want to know that part of the film. If you don't, then huge thank you for sitting until now, and we're now going into the trademarked heavy spoilers territory. You staying with me? You better, you son of a bitch. Now Paul ends up beating Fade, and this kinda leaves the Emperor completely fucked. Knowing he's next, he instead tries to form an alliance and he offers up his daughter to take Paul's hand in marriage. Paul agrees because it'll avert more bloodshed, but it causes a big issue between him and Chani. Man married to stop a war, but his personal feelings have unfortunately now been pushed to the side. Anyway, that's how it all plays out, and I have to say, yeah, this trailer, it blew me away. Looks absolutely incredible, and it just seems like they're stepping everything up and really delving into the subtext. The film looks breathtaking, and I can't wait to see it, and hopefully this video has helped you appreciate what's happening. Anyway, let us know your thoughts in the comments section below, and if you want to support the channel for as little as 99 cents a month, then please click the join button, and as a thank you, you'll get early access to videos every week. We also have our merch store over at shopzeroedition.com, which sells lots of nerdy inspired t-shirts, hats and more. We've just launched a Secret Invasion / Pulp Fiction shirt, so if you're enjoying the show and want to help us out, then head over to the link in the description. Now if you want something else to watch, we've got a video on screen right now going over everything that happens in the latest episode. Hopefully I see you over there, but if not, you know what, thanks for watching until this point. I'll see you on the next one. You take care of yourself. By the way, I've been Paul, you've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Much love, peace.